When the red, red robin goes bob, bob, bobbing along, along, there'll be no more sobbing when he starts bobbing his own sweet song. Wake up, you sleepyhead, get up, get out of bed, cheer up, get out of bed, laugh, love, laugh and be happy. Oh, the red, red robin goes bob, bob, bobbing along. Elaine. Elaine, you're always the first one. And now I've met Elaine. It was so nice to meet you the other day, Elaine. Elaine has become a client. She's been following and coming every single Monday night. She's always the first one. Now she's become a client. It's so nice to see you. Oh, thanks, Nancy. All right, Deidre from LA, or I don't know if that's Louisiana. I think it's Louisiana, and not Los Angeles, I'm sure. Hi, Michelle. So nice to see everyone. Newberry, Ohio. Lovely to see everyone. Okay, we got enough people here. Let's get started. Hi from Michigan. Hi from Oregon, Tennessee, Austin, Texas. Okay, so my introduction was to ditch the ubiquitous antibiotic ointment, and I'll tell you how I treat wounds with an important botanical. Now, it's in all the homeopathy books, this wonderful medicine, but we really mostly use it in a tincture form, which means it's in the gross form. And we're going to be talking about, if you haven't already figured it out, calendula tincture. Now, it's in my Materia Medica. We're in the C's. See all my notes? Oh, my notes are here. I have very bad penmanship. So I'm the only one who can read this stuff. So what I love about this medicine is that you can make it yourself. I mean, you can make any homeopathic medicine yourself, you know, folks. And I want you to know that at some point we'll talk about how to make a homeopathic medicine, so that if something isn't available, you're living out in the wild, who knows what could happen. You know, in my survivalist guide here, I talk about that. For those of you who are interested, this medicine is covered pretty thoroughly in my survivalist guide to homeopathy. And so I teach how to make medicines, how to make the homeopathic medicines in great detail so that you really know what you're doing. But I can tell you quickly how to do it. But this calendula, what is lovely about it is that it's pot marigold. Now, it's calendula officinalis, and make sure that if you decide to make your own, it's called pot marigold is the common name, but the Latin name is calendula, C-A-L-E-N-D-U-L-A, calendula. People mispronounce it. They say calendula, but you have to think like the way in Italian it pronounces. Calendula. Spaghetti with meatballs. See how you do it? You just think you're at an Italian restaurant. Okay? Gardunes. So if you put the accent in the right place, then it'll all make sense. Calendula. So not calendula, it's calendula. Calendula officinalis. And that is the absolute correct plant. So you can buy this from, you can buy it from a nursery in the spring, but you can also buy it. I used to buy a lot of my seeds from Richter's, Richkters, I think Richter's. They're out of Canada, and they have really nice products. Now, I used to do this years ago. I'm talking 20 years ago. I don't even know if Richter's is still around. And I'm sure there are many, many others you can buy your seeds from. So you buy them, just plant them in your garden. They'll just grow up. And of course, they're marigolds. And then what I would do is in the morning, I always pick your plants in the morning when you're going to make a tincture from them. So I would pick the buds, the heads in the morning and pop them right into alcohol. Now, what kind of alcohol? It would be, I used to buy Devil's Spring, but then I was living in New York at the time, and New York thinks they know that they know better than we do, and so they stopped selling Devil's Spring because we don't know how to make our own decisions, and so the state needs to make them for us. And so you couldn't buy it. And so for the longest time, I would then go to Ohio and Pennsylvania and other places to buy my Devil's Spring alcohol because it was the highest threshold of alcohol that I could find. And so, but then it became legal again. I think it was something like 25 years passed, and then suddenly it became legal again. But you can use vodka, high proof vodka, the highest proof you can find. And then you put your flowers in there and you stuff them in. You can put them in a jar like this. More often, people like to put them in an amber jar. Stuff the flowers in. You want a lot of flower heads and fill the alcohol all the way up to the top, and then top it off and then cap it. Now, normally it should be a dark bottle, but if it's not, if you don't have a dark bottle, you can put this in a cabinet where it's not going to get any light, and then you turn it or swish it about once a week or so, and it incorporates the calendula magic, and I'll tell you more about it tonight. And you're going to do that once a week or so, and then in a fortnight, that's 2 weeks, it then becomes medicine. Now, I actually used to leave mine in the alcohol for a lot longer than that. I wanted it really extracted. And then you tap it off and decant it and put it into, you can put it into your own little amber jars. It makes great Christmas gifts and hostess gifts. So why would we go through all of this? I mean, certainly you can buy it yourself right there. You can buy it on Amazon. This is from OHM Pharmacy, one of my favorite pharmacies on earth. But you can't purchase this, unfortunately, you can't purchase from OHM unless you're a student or a client of mine, because they're not a retail store. But you can certainly buy it on Amazon. And then I like Herb Farm, Herb, H-E-R-B, Farm is P-H-A-R-M. I like Herb Farm and Gaia, G-A-I-A. Now, I'm sure there are others. I'm just telling you those that I've purchased from through the years that I've trusted. And it's indeed in alcohol. I don't like to buy it in anything but alcohol. So why do we love Calendula officinalis? Because, and this is what Dr. Boricki says, it is a most remarkable healing agent when applied locally. So it is very specific for abrasions, burns, sores, fissures, dental extractions. Let's see if I've forgotten anything. Cuts, not bruises so much, but you can use it directly on the wound or the sore or the burn, etc. Now, if it's an alcohol, whether you've made it or purchased it, and you put it directly on a wound, you can imagine the person's going to go flying through the roof with pain. And you have to be careful of that, so you must dilute it. And so I always diluted it 1 to 20, means 1 drop of calendula. And this is the pipette, and the pipette automatically, you squeeze it and it automatically draws up about 20 drops. That's usually what most pipettes draw up. So you'd use only 1 drop of this and 19 drops of water, good clean water. Then you apply that directly or drop it directly onto the wound. But what I also like it for, also ulcers, by the way, it's also good for ulcers, bed sores, is then you can also put it on a sterile gauze and put that directly on the wound once you've cleaned the wound. Now remember, wound management is very important. That you have to make a very concerted effort to make certain that the wound is scrupulously clean. So scrupulously clean hands and hot soapy water are absolutely paramount. I'm looking at my notes here in my Materia Medica. And you also want to repeat this repetitively. So what we're going to do is, there's an injury. And let's say it's somebody has got a nail that was driven into their hand. The first medicine I always think of is, I know people are going to tell me in a second, and while I'm administering that medicine, I am cleaning that wound. I'm squeezing it to get all of any particles out. I want it to bleed. The more blood we can get from a wound, if it's a puncture wound such as that, the better it's going to be, because that's going to help clean out the wound. Then we should try to clean it as best we can. As painful as that may seem, you want to make sure that you've got nothing left in there. Then you plunge the hand, I don't know if you plunge it, but you place the hand into a bowl, very clean bowl, with the calendula tincture in warm water. What that does is it keeps a membrane from not growing over the wound quite yet. You don't really want a membrane to grow over a deep wound because it would be anaerobic. And you want to make sure that you don't close it up and it has an opportunity to grow deep inside. Instead, you want it kept open, and you're squeezing it still and maybe applying more and squeezing it and then putting it back into the bowl of warm water and calendula. Meanwhile, you're administering, let's see, I'm sure you folks are going to get this. Let me go back to the bottom. You bet. Ledum. Ledum. Ledum palastra. Ledum. Some people pronounce it ledum. I pronounce it ledum palastra. 200 C. If you only have X, then you use that as well, and you administer that. Now, if there's extreme pain, then you're going to use hypericum, Hypericum. I've also used hypericum mixed with arsenicum, which is a Banerjee protocol, a beautiful Banerjee protocol, by the way. So this calendula is very important. It's a very important aspect of how you're going to handle this. So let's see. What I also wanted to say is that people often ask me, well, don't you use it in a homeopathic form? And I have never used it homeopathically, but if you got it in 3X, I think it would be 3X, not 3C, 3X, and you mix it with a cerate, then it would be calendula cerate. Now, a cerate is just another word for lard or resin or wax, like beeswax. And I've actually made these ointments, or depending on how much oil you use in it, it becomes an ointment or a salve, or it can be something that's a little thicker. So then it's called calendula cerate. And in that case, it can be used either as a tincture or as a 3X cerate in the cerate. I have always used it pretty much, I should say not always, I've pretty much used it in tincture with my lard, and I've used lard, I've used coconut oil, I've used beeswax, olive oil, etc. I won't go into too much how I've done that. It is an interesting way of making medicines, and I love making medicines. I love making, I used to make botanicals all the time, long before I learned anything about homeopathy. I lived out in the country, and I would search the wayside and pick them wild, and it was great fun and wonderful for my kids to learn about nature and how to make medicines. Now, I want to point you to someone who I hold in very high regard. She's no longer with us. Her name was Dr. Dorothy Shepherd, Shepherd. And it was from Dr. Dorothy Shepherd's books that I gained my confidence in using calendula for injuries. And so it was, I can't remember which book it was. It was probably her first aider book, but she was a medical doctor in London, England, at the around World War I. And during World War I, she worked in a conventional medical hospital and was using mercurochrome and those kinds of substances that they were using in so-called modern hospitals, and found them lacking. At the time, I don't think she actually recognized that they were lacking until years later, when she compared those methods with the methods she learned after having become a homeopath after World War I. Then she went back and became a medical doctor working as a homeopath in a hospital also in London. And she compared the two, and she said that hands down, calendula was one of her best allies. So if you're so interested in reading a chatty book, a very valuable book, any book by Dr. Dorothy Shepherd, I urge you to purchase. Now, there was a while when you couldn't buy her books, and I used to have to search the internet, and I actually tried to purchase the rights to her books. I wanted to own the rights so that I could read her manuscripts on something like this, and I could do that, but I wanted to read all of her works and do all of Dorothy Shepherd's works, because the way she teaches homeopathy is very similar to the way that I teach homeopathy. And that is, it's very human. It's not removed. It's very family-oriented, grandmother-oriented, although I don't know that she ever had children, because I know that she lived a life of complete devotion to medicine, her patients, and then later in life, homeopathy. So, calendula for wound management. So I have to tell you a story about something that happened in our home years ago when we had a small farm. We had ducks. We had chickens and ducks and goats, and we raised bees, and we were having trouble with a fox. And I've told this story before, but I guess it's fun enough to be able to tell you again. At that time, I had an office that was connected to my home, and it was, I had lots of windows all the way around the office. It was a beautiful view. I had lots of sunshine just streaming into this office. And I knew that we were having this fox problem, and that he was going, or she was going after our chickens and ducks. And so one day I was sitting at my office, and I had a client sitting right in front of me. It's when I met with people in person. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw some scuttering off in the distance. And I looked over and I saw the fox. And the fox had one of our ducks in his or her mouth. And I don't know if you know anything about ducks and chickens, but when they're caught and they're choked they're held by the throat by a wild animal, they just let go. They acquiesce and they just give up. And so the duck was laying just lame in the mouth of the fox. And I ran out, and the fox with the duck in its mouth wasn't more than, 8 feet away from me. And I said, "Drop that duck." And he did. He dropped the duck. I couldn't believe it. He dropped the duck because I told him to, and he ran away. And my duck was alive, and not perfectly well, but well enough. And the duck went quacking off in the distance into the bushes. And so we didn't realize it until later on that, that the fox had actually bit the duck's face. And so right above the bill of the duck, there was this wound. But we did not notice it for 2 or 3, maybe even 4 days later. And when my husband said to me, "Something's wrong with this duck," you'd think it would have been around the neck, but apparently the fox didn't make holes in the duck's neck that we could see anyway. But we poured calendula all over the duck's neck and didn't realize that there was a wound above the bill. So when we saw it, I won't go into details as to how horrendous it was when we lifted up some of the duck's feathers and skin. I won't tell you what was in there because it'll just turn your stomach. So we had to clean it out, and I was holding the duck and my husband was cleaning it out. And as we cleaned it, I was pouring calendula in water, diluted, into the duck's, my husband's right over there recalling the whole story. He was pouring, I was holding her neck, and he was pouring some of the calendula into the wound. And as we were pouring it, some of it wasn't really debris, I hate to tell you what it was that was in there, came to the surface, and we would pick that out and then clean it more, and pick it out and clean it more. And then the next day we did it again. And the next day it was starting to close up, and then we would just pour it all around the area because the skin had kind of started to close. And then the next day we did it again and poured a little bit more. And I don't know how this duck put up with us, but she did. And she was fine. She was really just fine. Now, at the time, I did not know about hyper-Rs, which is a Banerjee protocol for infections. The Banerjees also use stramonium for animal bites. I did not know about the Banerjee protocols for that. This was a good, 25, 28 years ago. But I did know about Ledum. And so we did give the duck Ledum twice a day. Every day we would capture her, bring her back, and, put some Ledum in her little duck bill. And she lived for a long time, she did very, very well. So it's for that kind of a situation. And of course, you would not use straight tincture. That would have been extremely painful. So we had to dilute it. Now, had the duck been a human, I would have packed it with gauze or put up gauze on top with calendula on it and made the dressing full of calendula. But I know animals, and it's pretty hard to get something like that around a duck, and we would have had to have wrapped it around her bill, and then she wouldn't have been able to eat, and so who knows what would have happened. So we didn't do that. But normally that's what I would have done on a human. So let's see if I've covered everything. I want to make sure that I've covered everything that you need to know about Calendula officinalis. I think we have covered it. Let's look at questions. Do the flowers need to be fresh? I have some dried. No, you can use dried calendula flowers. I have actually made dried calendula flowers into, use them in a salve oil. Okay, what I've done is I've gotten a double boiler, and I put water in the bottom, of course, and then I put the dried flowers, and I've also done it with fresh, but I found actually dried flowers works just as well in this method, in olive oil. And I put it on very low so that the steam of the double boiler is just heating and allowing the olive oil to get warm and infuse it with the calendula flowers. And I really stuff it with calendula flowers. Whenever I do this, I really fill it to the top of the jar, or I fill it, I completely incorporate that olive oil with the flowers. So yes, I've done it that way, and you stir it, and I let it go all day long. I just keep stirring, and I'm cooking. I was making dinner this is when I had small children, or I was taking care of the homeschooling or whatever. Then I go back and stir it again. Now you can also do it in a crock pot. I've done it that way as well. Then when it's all steeped for a good, I don't know, I've always done it for about 12 hours. Then you strain out the flowers, and then you keep it warm, and then you start adding your cerate. For me, I most often used beeswax because we had bees. So I would put the beeswax in there, and then that would, you couldn't tell how thick it was, of course, until you pulled it out, and you put some on a popsicle stick, put it in the refrigerator, or keep it out for a little while, and then feel the texture so you know how thick you want this ointment. So I have made it as hard as a like a chapstick container. I used to buy those little chapstick containers and pour it in there, and then I'd add a little essential oil. And because I had boys, they didn't want to smell flowery, so I would use tangerine oil or birch beer oil or something like that, and then they would use it for their lips. It's great for chapped lips, especially given that my boys were always outside in the winter. So it was a wonderful healing agent, while it felt just comforting to use on a regular basis. All righty. So it's not something you have to be careful about how frequently you use it, because again, it's just a botanical. Let's see. I'm sitting with a burn, says Kelly. Was just about to use hypericum tincture topically, but now I will go get my calendula tincture. You bet. Now, burn also is, who knows what you use for a burn? I won't tell it. Let's see if anyone knows what do you use for a burn homeopathically in potentized form? Okay. Was it Dorothy Shepherd who talked about calendula to stop bleeding? Yes, it can also be used for, yes, thank you. It can stop bleeding. Absolutely. I don't know that she said it, but I do know that to be true, and my guess is she did say it. Okay, would you always pair the tincture externally with the homeopathic remedy internally? No, I've not done that. I've not used it homeopathically. I've used it only in tincture form or in salve form, or with, calendula cerate, which means that it's made with some kind of a like lard or something like that. Okay, are the marigolds blooming all the way or just the beginning? My marigolds and having lived in New York, they bloom all summer long. Not early, excuse me, not early summer. It's more midsummer. Think that marigold color is more like a late summer, autumn color. So it's good part of the middle of the summer all the way into fall. Okay, let's see. Let me just see. We're going to try to stay on task, if you don't mind, here, right on this subject. Okay, let's see. Hi from Missouri. Thank you. You're welcome. You are very welcome. Hi, Chris from Minnesota. Dorothy Shepard said to use undiluted calendula tincture to stop bleeding. Have you ever done this? I have never done that. And boy, I'd be a little bit, I would never question her. She's had lots of MASH unit type experiences. And I've had a lot myself, but I think she's had more than I have. And I would say you could use it to stop bleeding when it wasn't a very open wound where the pain wouldn't drive the person through the roof. Now, having said that, I would weigh it. If it looked like the hemorrhaging was very severe and I only had calendula, you bet I would use it. But instead, for wound or for bleeding, I would then instead go to something like arnica, hamamelis and arnica. I would strongly consider phosphorus. I would be using hamamelis in a 200, arnica in a lower potency perhaps. If I were going to mix them, I would use arnica by itself in a 200. I would use, what did I just say? Phosphorus 200. And I would administer it frequently, every few minutes. We don't take a medicine, give a medicine when someone's hemorrhaging and wait, till 6 hours later to use it again, obviously. Okay. Can I use something similar from the health food store? Well, it depends on what they have. Health food stores have so many different kinds of products. So I was told calendula could close a wound so quickly that infection can remain below. Is this a myth? I don't know that it's a myth. It may indeed be true, which is why I say keep the calendula, keep the hand, let's say it was a hand, in water, in warm water with calendula. That way, it won't close over. Now, that's been my experience. It does not close over if it's in warm water. And we're not putting a whole bottle of calendula, and we're only putting a couple of drops into a good-sized bowl, maybe, I don't know, 2 cups, 3 cups of water or so. So that may very well be, but I have not found that to be so. Perhaps it has to be directly on the wound without water. All righty. Can you purchase... Yes, you can just purchase calendula mother tincture. You bet. Cantharis. Yes, ma'am. Roseanne is the first one I see who said it. Nancy also said it. So did Sherry. So did Dana. So did Ashley. Very good. Elaine, yes. Jackie, Cantharis is for burns. And it will take the burn away pretty quickly. The pain away pretty quickly. It will keep it from bubbling over and becoming infected. So Cantharis 30, 200, either one of those two. Even if all you have is a 6, that would work too, and you use it as needed. And how do we know when it's needed? When you take the medicine, here's the answer. When you take the medicine and the pain starts to abate, now you're waiting and waiting and waiting. When the pain starts to come back again, that's just when you start taking it again. Okay, now you wait for it to go away. Okay, it's going away, it's going away. Now you wait for it to come back again. When the pain starts coming back again, that's when you give a dose again. And meanwhile, you're watching so that you can start noticing, oh, it seems as though the pain is coming every 3 minutes, every 30 minutes, every 3 hours, whatever that might be. That's why people say, so how often should it be used? I can't tell you until you know how frequently it needs to be used. And that's the way we treat conditions. And I believe that that's what I was told you I would be talking about today. That's how we treat conditions and know how frequently to use them when it is an acute. If someone's hemorrhaging, you don't wait for 6 hours from now, even though you might have read you use this every 6 hours. If someone is hemorrhaging, you're going to use it every 5 minutes if you need to. All right, Cantharis. Good job. Oh, this is a great group. You folks know your stuff. What brand for calendula tincture and ledum? I already talked about a brand for calendula. Ledum I like Boron. I like Highlands. I like Washington. I like Hahnemann Pharmacy, OHM, if you're a student or a client of mine. If you're in England, I like Helios. All righty, there we go. Fresh petals. Oh, a friend of mine uses fresh petals on her skin, and she's outlived the skin cancer diagnosis. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I believe that these these plants and homeopathic medicines can do an enormous amount for even the most sobering of illnesses. And so I think we've answered all the questions. I know you probably have more, but it's coming on 8:30 and I have a class tonight. So yeah, there is. Well, yes, there is. There's a place for modern medicine. And I always tell folks, I love modern medicine for diagnostics. They're very good at diagnostics. They don't always get it right because the human body can be complex. I like it for diagnostics. I like it for I think they're overused, so be careful. You don't want to go to too many tests. You only go for tests when you need them. I like them for emergency care. And I love surgeons. When surgery is used properly and not overused, surgery can be absolutely life-saving. That's where I think conventional medicine shines at its best. And so with that, I say God bless all of you. Oops. Mwah. Good night, and I'll see you next Monday night, as always, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Good night, everyone.